This episode is brought to you by Americas Rehab Campus. Get on the road to recovery with the best rehab in beautiful Arizona. Dial 1-833-272-7342. That's 1-833-ARC-REHAB.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are now tuned in to the Archer.
Good morning, everybody out there. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Arcast. My name is Buddha.
I'm Vance.
And I'm Matt.
And I'm Stan.
Yeah, we're here today with our brother Stan. He's with us, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a big round of applause. Stan is in the building. I titled the episode Stan the Man, bro.
Wow, I like that one.
Hey, the streets calls me Stan Be Fresh, you know what I mean?
Stan Be Fresh. Oh, I can see it, man. He's always coming in here. Shoes are on point. Everything's on point, bro.
Yes, sir.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. Just getting the day started. Thank God that I'm here, you know what I mean? It's a blessing to be here, and, you know, this opportunity is definitely my first opportunity ever being on a podcast, so I'm excited about it. Looking forward to it.
That's
yes,
awesome. I'm glad you said that because I used to be nervous when I first started.
Right? I think we all did.
Hey,
Yeah.
Listen, I had to pray before I came, you know what I'm saying? Make sure that,
Amen.
you know, be on me. So I'm here.
Amen. Amen. So you are here as a behavioral health technician at ARC, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what made you get into that line of work?
So I've been in it for, I guess, about collectively like 13 years. And I actually started off, you know, working when back home. I'm from Miami, Florida, working with kids, inner city youth, you know, for quite some time. It's definitely a passion of mine, you know, growing up, seeing my uncle who raised me, you know, do a lot for the community in Miami, started different programs, scholarship programs for kids, giving them an opportunity to get scholarships to be able to go to college when, you know, some of those things weren't afforded to them, even if they had good grades, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at being, you know, minorities in that type of area like that. So, you know, I always looked up to that and always wanted to kind of be in that field, working with kids on, you know, with behavioral issues and different things like that. But it comes deep behind me because growing up too, like I said, my uncle and aunt raised me. I was adopted by them. You know, so mental health and, you know, addiction and different things hits real close to home, you know, where, you know, my father, my biological father, you know, he was, you know, a drug dealer. You know, he was on drugs, different things like that. And my mother, she, you know, a lot of what she went through, she was paranoid schizophrenic. And a lot of that was drug induced, you know, just from being out there, you know, being involved with my father at the time. So, you know, for many, many years, man, I tried to run away from that field, you know, hearing the horror stories growing up, seeing the movies, and you thinking, oh, these people, you know, they crazy and, you know, all kind of different things you see in the movies.
Yeah.
But when I finally got into it, it was like nothing like you thought it would be. You know what I mean? Especially when I got afforded the opportunity to work with kids, which is where my real passion is. And I'm not saying I don't like working with adults, but, you know, being one of those kids, a troubled kid growing up and going through the things that I went through, I felt like God was calling me more towards them because I can have that opportunity to pour into them about my life and the things that I struggle with, you know, growing up. So it's been a blessing, man. It's been a ride, you know, since then as I got older, you know, still going through my own life experiences, my own type of addictions, you know what I'm saying? And just watching God, you know, carry me through a lot of those things. So
that's real powerful, man. You know, scripture even says that what the enemy means for evil, God is going to work out for good. So the very things you had to go through in life was all for a purpose.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I'm here, and I heard about ARC over 5 years ago, actually.
Really?
I used to work at another facility, a level 1 facility, and I remember when they first opened up, and everybody from the facility was like, oh, I'm going, I'm leaving. They pay more, and they do this and that and the other. And I'm like, what is it? And it's like, oh, it's a rehab center. I'm like, oh, okay, that's about all I knew, you know?
Yeah.
And so at the time, you know, I didn't jump on that bandwagon because, you know, I was, you know, doing pretty well where I was. And at that time, they were looking at, you know, doing some leveling up with different type of job positions. And I was in a position to be, you know, like a BHT manager and things like that. And so I just, you know, stayed where, I believe God had me at the time. But then a few years later, here I am. I left for some time for about 5 years, went into a full-time entrepreneurship. So, I just jumped out there doing my thing. And then, business got slow and God was just like, all right, well, you got to get back out there for a little bit. And so I put the application in and here I am. And
that's cool.
I had a few friends from my other job that work here too. So it was a blessing, man. It was a blessing to be here. And it's a different capacity because now I'm working fully with adults where I mostly worked with kids at the time. You know what I mean? But the atmosphere here is definitely a better atmosphere than working in the level 1 facility.
Oh man, I bet.
It's the opportunity to be able to share your story and really kind of be on that level. A lot of the younger guys, they look, obviously, they attract to me, like you said earlier, because they see how I dress and they're like, man, what's going on? Stan, how you doing? This and that. And being able to take that opportunity to pour into them and give them some words of wisdom, you know what I mean, in hopes that whatever those seeds that is being planted, God's going to water and hopefully it'll change their life in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. Real quick, one more thing, because when him and I had a chance to have a conversation one-on-one, and guess who came up? Matt. And I said, guess who was the one that got me on this team? Matt. And so I just want to give Matt the credit. Can you let everybody know, Matt, who you are, man, so people can...
Shout out to Matt.
Absolutely.
I'm really nobody. I'm just here. I just flow, right? I just flow with this river of life and try to connect with people and, just be a different person that I used to be. Be the person that I was meant to be, that God put me in this earth to be, right? I think we're all born supposed to be something. We get off track, and then hopefully we can get back aligned. And, I'm just grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to do what I do. Be available for people and take other people's journeys and trials and tribulations and be able to assert them into my life, right? And, take everybody for who they are, not for what they tried to portray, right? But, it's hard to break that stuff down. I've been working in this line of business for about 10, 11 years, and it's very rewarding. It's I used to do IT work and some other things, and nothing compares to be able to work in this field and see changes and meet the people we meet and be a part of somebody else's journey, right?
Yeah, and thank you so much for your humility, man, because that's biblical too. Because it says, let others boast you, not boast in self. And so that's the reason why him and I were boasting in you the other day when we were talking about you.
I can't boast myself.
That's biblical.
Yeah, it was a blessing to meet you because, I've heard all great things about you, Matt. Just for the short period of time I've been here and how it even came about. Like, I would see in the back and I'm like, man, who's Hellcat is that back there, man? And then I would see this
BMF right there, right under.
Yeah, like then I see this big old truck, and I'm like, man, who truck is that? And it's like, hey, man, that's like the right hand man of the business. I'm like, okay. I said I need to shake that man's hand and talk to him and ask him how I can level up to that level because that's what I'm looking at.
Well, I will give you a little clue. All that shit is material, and it comes and goes, right? And I could care less.
Yes,
I do enjoy the things, and I like people to enjoy them with me, right? And, that's the only thing that doesn't define me as a person. But it doesn't mean I don't enjoy, certain things. But take those away and I'd be okay, right? Yes, I share a story. There was a time in my sobriety where, my sponsor was like, boy, you're very unhumble and all this stuff. You got some shit going on. I need you to go talk to this guy. So I went over to a Fry's in Tempe, a Fry's grocery store. Met the manager who was his friend, my sponsor at the time's friend. He says, oh, so you're going to be bagging groceries and pushing carts for 3 months. And I was like, I guess I am, right? And I did that for minimum wage and $7.25 an hour. And I did that, and that has to be my favorite job of all time, right? I loved doing what I did. It was very humbling, very satisfying, though, too. But, I started working, and a month later, they're like, do you want to be our manager of our produce? I'm like, nope, I'm here to push carts and bag groceries. And I did that instead of 3 months. I did it for 6 months. And what an experience, right, to work with. They have a lot of special people working up front. Right. They have a lot of elderly. They have different types of people. And to be honest, I used to distance myself from a lot of those types, right? I have a little phobia, and it was an opportunity for me to put that phobia away and learn and love unconditionally.
Yeah.
And it was really hard in the beginning, but like I said, it turned out to be one of the best times of my life. I couldn't even afford to eat every night. I'd save the money because I had my kids every other weekend, and I would take them to the movies and Dave and Buster's and spend all this money on them. And I would find meetings that served food, at least once a day so I could eat. That was probably one of the greatest times of my life, to be honest with you.
Sir.
Well, I wish I would have heard this podcast, Artcast rather, back in the day, because you know what? I would have heard Matt say, "Take it away and I'll be okay," because guess what they used to take away from me? All those $100,000 vehicles, they used to be repossessed all the time.
Right. Yeah.
And guess what? Who wasn't okay after that? But you know what? If I'd have heard you, Matt, I would have been like, guess what? I'm okay. Take it away.
Yeah, you know what's a blessing about that, Matt, is that like I said, when I saw it, it wasn't about, for me, the material aspect of it. It was like, I want to know where he came from.
Right.
Gotcha.
Because, for me, it's like, all of that materialistic stuff doesn't mean anything, because when if we die tomorrow, it ain't going with us. You know what I'm saying? But what I look at and just hearing your story is like, you started somewhere from a humble beginning.
Yeah.
From where you had a struggle in life. You know what I mean? That wasn't ultimately who you were.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was just some choices we made. You know what I mean? We've all been there, but God had a bigger plan. And to see where you are now, it was like you put in the labor, so your reward is the fruits of your labor, which is a biblical thing too. It's not to say that we can't have those things, but like you said, the key was, if you still take it away, because God gives us and he takes away. If he took it away today, you're
sure
still
does.
okay. Why? Because there's so much more in this world that gives you so much more riches than cars, money, houses, or anything like that. You know what I mean? We're happy where you are. You said the main thing was your kids. You know what I'm saying? That to me is my world. My kids, you know what I mean? Like, I'll give it up. If I have to sell my last everything, down to my last dime, I'm giving it to my kids. You know what I'm saying?
That's
I'll
awesome.
do anything for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, family kind of trumps everything, right? And we're not, when we're out there doing what we do, we don't care about family because we don't give a shit about ourselves.
Right.
And that's the difference today is that I can look my wife in the eye and she knows I love her, and I can tell her that, and my kids as well, and I actually mean it. I suit up and I show up. Whether I want to be there or not, I can keep that to myself, but I'm there.
Yes.
And I'm available and I'm coherent. I'm blessed. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not, but with those blessings has come a lot of turmoil and a lot of, like you said, life's based on decisions, right? I usually was told, hey, son, you go this way. You're going to come to that fork in the road. You go right. You're going to have all the money in the world. You're going to have a great family. You're never going to have problems. Your health, all this stuff's going to be great. But if you go left, it's going to be fire and brimstone. I'd get to that fork in the road and I'd be like, what the hell does that old man know?
Right.
Screw him. I'm going left. I'm going to make my own path. And geez, talk about making some dumb decisions. We don't think about that stuff when we're younger, and we think, well, what do these people know? Well, they've been through it.
Right.
They go through life every day. They've probably made bad decisions like we have too, but we don't want to sit and listen.
Right.
And we got to have an open mind, and we got to be able to view things not from, our horse blinders on, but we got to view things from a 360 view.
Yes, sir.
How's my action going to affect my family, my friends, coworkers, just people out in general, and base our decision making off of those types of things.
Right.
Instead of, hey, what am I going to get out of this decision?
Yes, sir.
Because that goes away like that too. That self-rewarding behavior, like boom, it's done, and it's like, wow, that wasn't that great. Now I got to deal with all these consequences.
Right.
Man.
Yes, sir.
So enough about me. This is about Stan. So Stan, like growing up, I heard you say, you grew up in Miami. Obviously, you said it was kind of a broken home. And you grew up with your uncle and them. So sports, how were you in school? Like, did you see a lot of that drug use down there in school, things like that?
Oh, yeah. So just kind of backtrack a little bit. So I was born in St. Petersburg, Florida. And, we grew up in the hood. I bounced back and forth between, grandma's house, and kind of was under the wing of my grandfather at the time, who was an entrepreneur himself. And when my father wasn't in, prison or whatever, there's been times where, like I said, like he would take me wherever he would go, and,
This is your biological father you're talking about?
Biological father, yeah, like me and my little brother, and just seeing a lot of things, you know what I mean? We lived in the hood. You see the the drug addicts, roaming and going to the trap house and different things like that.
Yeah.
Even with my other grandma, unfortunately, she was a heavy drinker, but growing up, we didn't really, as a kid, you don't really see these things because the one thing that she did, she worked hard and you just kind of saw that, seemed like we was never without. If you ate a hot dog and you had a syrup sandwich or some bread, it was like, that was, hey, man, we eating, you know what I'm saying? But you didn't see the trials and the tribulations of the things. You didn't know what that was until you get older. And like I said, unfortunately, because of that situation, the state came in and said, hey, listen, we're going to take the kids and, all these different things. And, my aunt and uncle in Miami who were a product of certain areas, the hood being in St. Pete or, the streets of Liberty City, they made something of themselves, got good jobs, worked for Bell South at the time, which is now AT&T.
Yeah.
So they've been with that company for that long. But they took the reins and adopted me and one of my sisters. Unfortunately, they were trying to get my youngest brother, but his mother wouldn't let him. So he ended up staying in that environment, which led into selling drugs, catching a murder case, just and my oldest brother, same thing, just a lot of different things that I've seen, going back and forth, seeing a lot of family on, smoking weed, smoking crack, drinking a lot, all those different things. And even being in Miami, like I said, it was still a struggle down there too, because it seemed like to the rest of the family, oh, you guys got it good. Y'all living in this nice house with your aunt and uncle and y'all acting this way and doing this. And I'm like, but y'all don't see what goes on behind closed doors, because we still was being verbally, physically, mentally, and emotionally abused. Yeah. You know what I mean? Not by my uncle per se, but my aunt, who was my biological father's sister. So she kind of took those reins, and growing up, just being this, looking at all of this, it was like, man, why I can't have my mom and dad? You know what I mean? Yeah. So you would think, being in school, growing up, high school, middle school, just seeing the peer pressures of, the kids around you, that do drugs at that age in middle school, kids in elementary school, you know what I mean? It's heavy down there, And my thing was, I never wanted to do drugs. It was just never something that was appealing to me, because I played sports. I ran track and I played football and basketball. And I was always this kid growing up. I wasn't the best looking dude in the world, but I was like, man, listen, I'm too pretty for all that. You know what I mean? I ain't trying to be, looking with no teeth in my mouth. All these different things that you see these kids or these older people, things that I've seen in life. Yeah. But my thing was I still was rebellious. I was attracted to gangs. You know what I mean? That was my thing, because I thought maybe, that was cool. The other thing is just seeing some of my friends getting beat up by predominant gangs like Crips and Bloods and different things like that. And I remember being in middle school, getting bullied by a guy that was on drugs one time, said something about my mom. We got in a fight. And it was over from there. And I was just like, you know what? This will never happen to me again. So a buddy of mine, one of my really good friends in middle school, we said, listen, man, let's start a gang, bro. And so we literally started a gang called Mafiosis Clique. Wow. And we said, you know what? We're going to start this gang. That's going to be the gang that's going to fight against the Bloods and the Crips and all of this, because we don't want people getting beat up. Well, of course, anything you try to start, as you know, the same story with the Bloods and Crips, they started these gangs to protect the community, and now you look at it as a criminal world of just mischief. You know what I mean? And that's what happened. The gang pretty much grew to about 3 or 4 different middle schools, and we ran it like that, And wow. I'm thinking, this is cool. Well, it wasn't cool. You know what I mean? When you're seeing your friends getting beat up and just different things going on, and then I remember that just wasn't enough for me. You know what I mean? I remember honestly getting jumped into one of those predominant gangs. I got jumped in church. In church. How bad it was for me and how rebellious I was, because I just didn't understand. You know what I mean? Like, woe is me. My dad ain't here. Woe is me. This is what's going on around me. You know what I mean? Blaming the world, but not blaming myself.
Yeah.
And how old were you back then?
When in middle school, I was probably about 13, 14. When we started, I was probably 7th grade. I was in 7th grade when I got jumped, and I was I want to say 8th grade, 9th grade when I did that in church. Just being a fool.
Man.
And I tell people that story. It's like, man, in church, I'm like, yeah, in church, like that's who I was. And then as I got older and started experiencing life, man, and really looking at everything around me, I remember it didn't change for me until my 12th grade year, right before I went off to college. And I had this spiritual experience one night where I felt like I was asleep and something was on my chest and I couldn't breathe.
Oh, yeah, I've had that before.
And it was like this vision. I opened my eyes and it was the devil. It was a demon. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It was spiritual. It was definitely a demon. And I remember like it was choking me in the middle of the night. And I'm like, I can't breathe. But because I grew up in the church, the only thing I could say, because I was trying to call out for my aunt. And it's like you hear the words in your head, but ain't no words coming out. And I'm like, I'm choking. I can't breathe. I thought I was going to die. And I just stopped and I said, in the name of Jesus. Said it 3 times. And next thing you know, it ran away.
Wow.
It went out. It like literally opened up my door and went out the room.
Yeah, that's scary, man. Can't even say anything. Your words, everything's just taken from you.
I literally can relate with that because you just reminded me when I was young too. The same thing happened to me in one of my rooms. I was being cussed out by a demon. And I literally was screaming and hollering, thinking that was my mother or my father. And just like you said, that it was all in my head that I was hearing it, but it was real because it was in my room, and I felt like I was dying.
Yes, sir. And that was the experience. So I remember right before I was leaving to go to college, I was having this conversation with my aunt, and I told her about it. And she paused and she said, "Listen," she said, "those are the demons that you keep struggling with for all your life." And I said, well, I went through all of this. And I said, why did you do this? And why did I go through this and this and that? And she said, listen, I do this because I didn't want you to grow up to be who your father was. Didn't want you to grow up to be who your grandfather was. Now that was a whole nother story because my grandfather, I looked up to him. I didn't know all the things he did, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of the men in my family, it was just like a chain reaction of just nothing good. In and out of jail, smoking drugs, drinking.
Generational
curses. Yes, sir. And, she was like, I don't know any other way. And so it still hurt me because I'm just like, this ain't cool because it still went on with me and her, the abuse, the verbal for quite some time. But it struck me though what she said, and she was like, you need to let those demons go. You know what I mean? And you're about to go out here in this real world, and now you're about to be on your own. Oh man, I was like, okay, whatever. Went off to college, man, it was a downward spiral.
Wow.
It was just women, and women.
Oh man,
struggling. It was crazy. We went out to college, me and my boys, we had our own dance crew and everything like that. So we had that whole experience of being able to travel and dance at different things. And of course, the girls.
Like that, man? I didn't know all that.
And I was out there, man. I used to break dance, man. I was all of that, man,
Carried the cardboard around in the boombox?
Listen, man, we did it all. Like I did all kind of, type of dancing, man. And it led to me being a stripper, everything, bro. Like,
for real, dude?
Wow.
I was out there, like,
You too.
Thought that was,
Vance, don't even say you were a stripper, bro.
we thought that was cool because it got the girls, man. We would be dressed up and everything. You remember those TV shows? They got, America's Dance Cruise and all of that. Like, that's who we were. We was a part of that.
Do you have those jeans with the buttons you just rip off like that?
Oh, man, listen, man, I just showed up, man. It cost you $500, just showed up to the door, you know what I mean?
Crazy.
It was just like...
How old were you when this happened?
I was 18.
18?
18, man. We actually got introduced to that situation by a gentleman who had a friend. He had a friend that was like turning 30 or 35 or something like that. And they were looking, because they heard about our dance crew, and they was like, hey, man, would you come to this place? And, I got this party and they're paying. And, you know, we just want you guys to show up, no shirts on, whatever, you know what I mean? That's when back in the day before the dad bod, you know, I had my LL Cool J status on back then, you know what I mean? So I was like, yeah, for sure. And the women are how old? Like 30? I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be there to get there.
Wow.
We amateurs, and then next thing you know, the real stripper show up, and he like cock diesel, ripped up and everything. We like, golly. I was like, okay. So that's how we started asking questions about the business, man, and we did it probably for about a couple months, man, and then we just kind of in our heads was like, man, I don't want to be known as no stripper and this type of guy, you know what I mean? And where you really find out that a lot of women didn't really gravitate to that. It's just an entertainment for them, but they wouldn't date a guy
That's what I was gonna ask you. Like, how lucrative of a business is that? Like, from the opposite end, you know what I mean? Like, I've never. That's so crazy.
In Tallahassee, man. So here's the thing: in Tallahassee, Florida, because that's where I went off to school at.
Go to FSU?
No, I didn't. We had an opportunity. Me and one of my best friends, we had an opportunity to try out. You know, because we were still trying to play football, but it just nothing panned out.
Yeah.
But that was at the time one of our favorite football players was Peter Warwick back then, and he was at FSU at the time. But anyway, we went to Tallahassee Community College.
Vance pulling out his stripper.
I was a
pictures
stripper. You literally taking me back to memories, man.
Listen, man, we was out there, man. We was out there. Yeah, we attended Tallahassee Community College. But we also spent a whole lot of our time on FAMU campus, which is a historical black HBCU, historical black college out there in Tallahassee. You know, that's where my aunt actually graduated from, and my uncle, he graduated from Bethune-Cookman. But yeah, we was out there, man, just out there.
Man,
Some flash dance shit, Vance.
Yeah, back in those days.
did you wear the warmer socks?
I wish we could show this on this podcast.
I'll share them.
Yeah, you
Send
got
them to me. I'll put them on the Instagram.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but you just brought me back to my memories because I was just a little over 19 when I first got drafted by the Broncos, and guess who I was? A stripper.
Yeah.
I even came out here to Tucson, Arizona, went to a strip club.
Yep.
And was kind of showing off in front of a young lady and asked her to come on back out to Colorado with me. So I got her airline ticket out there. But guess who ended up picking her up at the airport? Shannon Sharp. So I couldn't see her. So I won't tell you the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Oh man.
See, man, that's
Shannon.
yeah, man. That was back in those days, man. It was just crazy. But like to answer your question, Buddha, the business is definitely lucrative. Like people make money. In Tallahassee, there wasn't allowed to be strip clubs in the city because it's the capital of Florida.
Okay.
So you had to go to the outskirts. So we never actually did it in clubs. We were just private. You know what I mean? Like we just went to the doors and different things like that. But you know, again, that life, and then we was like, man, we about to do porn. We about to do all this stuff, man. We was young. I was
Get deep into it.
I was wild, but like I said, that was my addiction. It was women, man. That was
my addiction.
Sexual addiction. You know what I'm saying? Those generational curses. Because guess what? My biological father dealt with that, man. He had, you know, man, I probably got brothers and sisters I don't even know about. To be honest with you, I don't know. You know what I mean? He was, you know what? You know, back in those days, like the Temptation said, Papa was a Rolling Stone. You know what I'm saying? So,
and you said that you had those little moments in time where you would hang out with your biological dad, right?
Yeah, when I was younger, a few times, you know, when we would visit, you know, back home in St. Petersburg, like my aunt and uncle would take us there. And when he wasn't in prison, you know, he was there in the house, and you know, it was never really any kind of like real conversation because I was angry at him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was mad. Man. I could write a movie about my life, man.
Yeah, you need to write a movie.
Man, listen, I remember a time where I was 16 and me and my little brother, we were fighting in the room with my cousins. My cousins was there and it was cold. We were supposed to be going to Disney World the next day or something like that. It was cold, man. Me and my little brother was fighting. And he had said something about my mom because we got different moms. And I said something about his, and we fighting and whatever. And then here comes my biological father running in the room, snatching us up and all of this. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, bro, get your hands off me, bro. Like, you don't even know me like that. And he's like, who you think? You know, he just kind of like, I stood up to my dad. And I was like, I cursed at him. I was like, man, you ain't even my fucking father, this and that, blah, 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 blah. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, bro, I'll kill you, bro. Like, I was hot. Like, that whole, everything that I've held in for since I was a kid just rose up to a point where he threw us outside. We was in our underwear. It was like 30 degrees outside. And I was just outside working up this anger. And I told my little brother, I was like, man, I don't even care, like, if I'm out here, but I'm not finna let my little brother be out here freezing like this, right? And so his mom comes out, and she's like, Stan, calm down. Calm's like, nah, man, I'm gonna kill him, this and that. And I'm like, man, I don't like this dude. He ain't never been in my life. I was just going off, like, and I think, honestly, that was probably a real turning point in my life, because I actually believed at that moment I was gonna kill my father. I really wanted to. And it weighed on me for quite some time. But as I got older, like I said, I came to some realization that I can't continue to blame the mistakes of my father for why I'm making the mistakes that I'm making in life. I have to take some accountability, you know what I'm saying, for my own actions.
Sitting in there with all that hate and that anger, just brimstone inside you, you know, it doesn't do anything to them.
Right.
You know who it does is it kills us inside, right?
Sir.
And that's, you know, why I always tell my wife, she's like, well, you know, this happened and how come you're not upset? And I'm like, why would I be upset about it? All it does is hurt me.
That's right.
Because it's not going to hurt whoever screwed me over, or did me wrong or whatever.
Right.
They're not sitting there thinking about it.
Right.
Me, I'm sitting here stewing and it's eating me up, and I'm getting, you know, and I can let that stuff just rot me from the inside out.
Physically killing you on the inside, like anger, hate, all of those things, like, you know,
jealousy, envy,
all of that.
Dude,
it's literally tearing you down.
That's real. And that's another thing that I think of as far as addictions, you know, working in this type of field. I think that's the cool thing about the podcast is even for people who aren't necessarily addicted to any type of a substance, those same things, the pride, the ego, the jealousy, the hate, like you let those sit inside of your heart and they manifest into something else. The fact that you said that you were scared, like I finally realized that I was probably capable of really hurting my dad. That's what happens when you let those things, just like you said, manifest on the inside.
Yeah. And you know what? And it still, you know, what's funny, not even funny, but it still manifested for quite some time. I don't think I really had a full deliverance from all that hate and anger until I was probably like in my 30s.
Wow.
When I first came back from Texas in 2015, I just got out of my first divorce, and I enlisted into the military at that time in the Air Force, Air National Guard here in Arizona. And I remember when I was in basic training and a lot, you know, just going through that whole experience. And I remember getting a call because I was in basic training, you know, they take your phones from you, but when they give it to you, you only can, you know, make quick phone calls to your family, but they say don't make any texts and things like that, right? So I was texting, you know, at the time my girlfriend and this and that, and I was doing the opposite of what they told me, you know, trying to be slick. And so I get this call, and it was like, yeah, the commander want to see you down in the office. I'm like, oh, man, they don't looked at my phone, and they saw, you know, I didn't know what the military do. I don't know. They figured it out. So I'm thinking, oh, man, I'm about to get kicked out of basic training over a text message, man. So I get down to the office, and it's the commander and a master sergeant and a chief. And they was like, hey, trainee Batson, we wanted to let you know that your mother passed away. I'm like,
oh, wow.
So I'm sitting there like this, and I'm like, my first question to them was like, which one? Because my biological mother and then my aunt, I called mom too, and they wasn't 100% sure. So it was like, yo, your sister Stacia called you, and your another sister named Dominique. So we need you to get on the phone and, you know, just call and find out. So I get on the phone and find out that it was my biological mother. And so the whole time that, you know, I didn't cry or anything like that. And you know, it was just like, oh, okay. And so they questioned me, and it was like, what do you mean, you know, which mother? I say, well, I told them kind of a little bit of brief of my story, and it's like, oh, okay. So it was my biological mother that passed away. It was sad in the moment, but like I said, it didn't really hit me or affect me because, again, like I told you earlier, I didn't grow up with my mom like that. You know what I mean? Her being in and out of hospitals and the things that she was going through, I wasn't around that. You know what I mean? So it didn't affect me until one day I'm standing in formation, and like a ton of bricks just hit me. And we were saying the Airman's Creed, and I broke down and cried in the middle of it, lost my bearings and everything.
Man.
Because it was like, I was my biological mother's only son. And I know she always loved me, but I never got a chance to tell her that I loved her. Because I didn't see her. I haven't seen her in for that time, probably 10 years, maybe even longer. I don't even know. And it was just like my only mother, my actual mother died, and I didn't get that chance. And I didn't get a chance to just tell her I forgive her.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a chance to tell her, that I was never really mad at her. I understood, but it hurts, to not know that you didn't have your own mom in your life and, kind of get that closure that I needed with that. And then, with my father, I never really at that time didn't get that closure with him because he was locked up at the time. And I still hated him. And then one day he got out when my aunt passed away in 2018. She had pancreatic cancer. And before that, I remember asking her a question like, why were you so hard on us? Why'd you treat us the way you did? And she actually, because I had a lot of hate and anger towards her too. And she said, you know what? I'm sorry. I did what I knew best for you because I didn't want this for you. And I broke down and cried. I remember her telling me that. And that was a very emotional moment where I think I had some deliverance from that hate and that anger towards her and how she treated us growing up, man. And, it was like when she passed, it was like a lot of that kind of went away as far as like the things that I struggle with. Some of that hate went away. I'm still going through, I'm still, even today, still trying to, release some of that. But when I got that chance to talk to my father, when at the house, I literally told him, I say, man, I hated you for 35 years of my life. Actually, I was 38 at the time when I told him 38 years of my life. I hated you. Didn't want nothing to do with you. You never was there. And you just made the decision. I was just going off on him. And all he said to me was, he said, you have every reason to be the way you are, to feel the way you feel. And he said, I made my decisions. I did what I did, and I had to give you up because I thought at the time it was the best thing I had to do for you. And I was like, that hit me hard because it was like, I never knew he even realized at that point in his life that everything, the choices he made, he knew he had to give me up because I would have been the product of my environment. I would have followed him. I would have been who my brothers are today, my cousins are today, and both of them are locked up. Again, that could have been me. I could have been the one that pulled that trigger and killed our uncle over some drug money. I could have been the one that was over there while my oldest brother who got shot 8 times still lived. And still you telling me to this day you get shot 8 times or even multiple times and you still out there in the streets. Like, does that not, that could have been me. But God had a different plan for me. You know what I mean? And I thank God that I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm still struggling a little bit, trying to let go of some of that anger, but it did affect a lot of, relationships and a lot of things that I struggle with in life. But I thank God for it because it also made me a man. It also made me who I am today to be where I'm sitting right now. You know what I mean? To be in this environment, to be able to talk to you guys, to share my, my story, man. I know I have a purpose here. I know when my aunt told me that I shouldn't even be here. Yeah. I told Vance this story the other day, man. When they found out my mom was, paranoid schizophrenic, it's because she jumped out of a 2-story apartment complex window. And when they asked her why she jumped out, her response was, well, the voices told me I needed to jump out and save my son. I wasn't even born. I was 8 months. She was 8 months pregnant with me when she jumped out that window.
Wow. Man.
8 months pregnant. I don't know of any pregnant woman who jumping out of a window and they say, I don't think she did. I think she broke her arm or something like that.
Was she under the influence at the time?
I don't even know. I don't even know. I wasn't to do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm almost, I'm not going to sit here and say she was. I'm not sure. Yeah. But, this is a story my aunt told me, which is her sister.
And how was it growing up? Like, I know you said that it had been like 10 years from the moment she passed to when you had seen her last. How were those little interactions with her when you were around your biological mother growing up?
It was, it was beautiful because my mom, she was, wasn't all there in the head. So she liked to talk.
Yeah.
She liked to talk, so I'll just sit there and listen. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, all right, Mom. And then I would ask her little questions here and there, see if she remembered anything, me, being a kid or, when I was a baby and this and that. And she's like, oh, yeah, you would be all over here and you bit your cousin's fingers. And it was just like those moments, those little moments I cherish because I just let her talk.
Yeah.
And, I knew that if she was ever in her right mind, she would, be proud of who I am,
Absolutely.
and I know she would have been definitely a great mother. You know what I'm saying? Like I always saw that in her. I remember, and this is probably one of the reasons why I never done drugs too, because I remember growing up, I think I was like 15, maybe. I remember cause she smoked heavily. She was a heavy smoker. And I remember picking up a cigarette one time and I lit it and I put it in my mouth and I was just blowing through it, not like puffing it in. And she turned around and saw me and she literally like her whole hand flew and she was like, boy, if I ever catch you smoking or doing anything in your life, she said, I'll tell you something. You know what I mean? And that's how black women talk back then. You don't know, tell me what, mama? You know what I mean? Like, tell you something. I don't know what that means, but it meant whatever it meant. You knew what it meant. It was like, all right, ma, I'll never smoke, ever again. You know what I mean? And I never smoked cigarettes. I never done any drugs, And I remember my dad, my biological father, I can give you this one thing. I remember he told me, and this was traumatizing. He said if he ever caught me doing drugs or found out I was selling drugs or doing anything related to that, he said he'd hit me upside the head with a baseball bat. He was crazy, so I believed him. So to this day, never touched it. You know what I mean? And I'm not here to judge anybody who's ever experienced that. I just know for me, it wasn't the path I wanted to choose. Yeah. Unfortunately, I chose some other paths. You know what I'm saying? So those experiences, man, I do see those little moments and those little experiences in my life that, I can remember and I cherish them, especially with my mother, those times just letting her talk, just being on the phone sometimes, just let her talk, and listening. So
I think it's super interesting, man, listening, to your story with stuff like that, because it hits home in a lot of different spots. Right now my heart is going out to my pops because my pops just lost his dad, my grandfather, on the 13th of February, right? 93 years old. He had a good life, man, but, I know my pops and him had a real rocky relationship. And my dad is the type of person who's closed off, no emotions. We don't talk about this. We just, we put it away. So I've been praying for him a lot, man, because I know, just like you said, when you were saying the creed or whatever it is that you were saying, you just broke down. I know that moment's going to come, and there comes a certain point in your life where, like you said, having to get rid of those issues, those things, that hate or that anger that you have towards somebody else, and you just got to love them where they're at, man. And I know that moment's going to be coming here pretty soon.
And to say something to that, that moment has come from me and my father because he's still alive. I remember one day he called me. It was the first time after he got out, he actually called me. And he was like, hey, son, I was just, calling to check in on you, see how you was doing. And, and in that moment as he's talking, it was like God spoke to me. He was like, this is a pivotal moment for you. You can either continue to keep holding on to all of that anger and that hate in that moment, or see this moment right now as your father is reaching out to you to rekindle and to restore something that was never there. And it was like a burden just lifted me. It just lifted off of me. And I took that moment and I said, hey, Dad, what's up? How you doing? How's life? What's going on? And it was like as though that conversation was like as though happened years ago.
Yeah. Like
as though I was a kid having this conversation with my dad, just asking him about life. And it's been that way since. You know what I mean? When he can get on the phone and talk, and every time we talk, no hate. I don't feel nothing towards him. Like I'm not angry. Like I forgive him. And I realize that he made a choice, but he knew at the time it was the best choice was to give us up because he didn't want me to be who he was or to grow up in that environment that, as I explained, those things that were going on and that for me not to go down that road. And so I'm happy, man. You know, I love my father, you know what I mean? And I think, you know, I do thank God for him, because I don't think if I didn't experience what I've experienced in life, I probably wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't have the motivation. I wouldn't have, you know, probably just where I'm at, you know, the love and the desire that I have for my own kids, because, you know, I want to be in my kids' life. I want to give them that. I want to be a father. I love being a father. I love coming home and seeing, you know, my kids, and my oldest, he's 19, you know, when he called me the other day, while I was at work.
19.
Ready to get off. Yeah. He called me. He said, "Hey, Dad, I wanted to ask you something." And I was like, "What's going on?" I thought something was wrong. He was like, "Man, Dad, I was going to this prayer meeting." And I was like, that threw me for the loop, because he lives with his mom, and they don't just do that. You know, they don't go to church. They don't, you know what I mean? And I've always been praying that God uses him in some kind of fashion. And so he calls me. He's like, "Dad, I went to this prayer meeting. I experienced something, and I want your thoughts on it. And I want to know what the word says about it."
Wow.
I'm like, wow.
That's cool.
You know, and he's telling me he's going to church every Sunday. I never told him he had to.
Your son is.
Yeah.
That is awesome, man.
And it's like the beauty of that in that moment, that he reached out to his dad to ask his dad to teach him some word. Wow. That's huge for me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, man, if you knew anything about even that relationship between me and my son, you know what I mean? Like, that's a whole nother story in itself.
Yeah.
And to have that now, it's a beautiful thing. And it's like, I enjoy that.
It's a miracle.
You know, and that's a blessing. Yes, it definitely is a miracle, because I've been praying. You know, my son's a music producer. This is what he loves doing, is music. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you know, I pray every day that God, you know, uses him in that industry. You know what I'm saying? Because I know, talking to you, Buddha, you know, you've been there, and you know how it can consume people. You know how it can make you go left. You know what I'm saying? And he's a good kid. And my prayer is that whatever God is doing in him, he utilizes that talent and that gift that God gave him for the good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I pour into him all the time and encourage him and whatever. But it's just a blessing to have these relationships that I have, you know what I'm saying, with him, you know, with my, you know, my two little ones right now, and, you know, in the hopes that, you know, one day I can rekindle my relationship with my other three, with my ex-wife, and that's just a whole nother ball game. But you know, I pray for them all the time, and I know that God will restore it.
That's great.
I mean? So
make sure you let your son know that, you know, the scripture says that your gift will make room for you.
yes.
But in everything you do, do it to the glory of God, not self. So
Yes, sir.
just tell him that
Yes,
part.
Sir. Yes, sir, I do, man. And I definitely, I actually shared that with him. And
You did?
So, yeah, so he's understanding, you know, like I said, but I'm that father that's not trying to, you know, I'm letting him live. I'm letting him do it, because he has to still go through his own, you know, experiences in life.
Yes,
you know
we
what
do.
I'm saying? I can't be who my aunt was and try to force and do all of these things, which led me to do. I need him to experience it, and that's what God has to do. You know what I mean? Allow us to go through our own.
We all have
experiences.
choice.
Yeah, our own choices. Yep. So.
No, man. I mean, I think your story is super awesome, and you know, I want to give you some credit too, and let you know I'm proud of you, because just like you said, your dad made a choice to acknowledge his wrongs and to say, you know, like you said, you know, I had to give you up in order for you to have a better life, because you know, he felt in his heart that he couldn't provide the right life or lifestyle for you at that time, you know. But you also made that choice in yourself to let go of that hate, to let go of, you know, all of those grudges and stuff that you held on to. And I think that's a beautiful thing when a person is able to come in and break a generational curse, because you're breaking it for your family and for the generations forward. You know what I'm saying?
And people listening to your testimony, they're going to be saying, you know what? That guy's testimony is showing me just because I'm struggling, like he's reminding me of the things he had to go through, doesn't mean I have to use. So maybe I need to get into treatment.
Right.
Yes.
No, and I think we all struggle still after we do certain stuff, right? Struggle's
biblical
part of life.
Yes, it is.
And we're going to have struggles today. We're going to have struggles
To the end.
tomorrow, and you know, it just never ends.
It never ends.
You know, I remember this prophet told me one time, he asked me this question. He said, "Man, what's the biggest room in the world?" And I was like, I have no idea. He said, "The room for improvement." He said, "You're going to always keep struggling, but you're going to always keep improving to be a better person." And I remember, and that always stuck to me. That and stay ready to keep from getting ready. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, those two, you know, I would guess quotes or statements to me hit home. But that one, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. We're improving every day. You know what I mean? We're gonna go through those struggles, but like you said, Matt, that's the Bible says it's only to grow us. It's to make us better.
If not, we're stagnant.
Exactly.
Right.
If you ain't growing, if you ain't going
Struggling
through those
and growing,
struggles,
yeah.
you just sitting there and you ain't doing nothing with yourself. You got to go through those struggles. You got to go through those failures. We hear it all the time on the TikToks and Michael Jordan and everybody saying, I failed 1,000 times. You know what I'm saying? But those failures only made me who I am today, made me greater because you learn from them. You know what I mean? I remember when I was reading a book about Donald Trump, and he was saying that he went bankrupt like 7 times. Like, you're talking about, this is a billionaire.
Yeah.
7 times. And I'm like, but you're still a billionaire. And he said, well, those 7 times, every time I went bankrupt, I sat down. I didn't take it and say, you know what, woe is me. I'm done. I'm going to be homeless or a hobo on the street somewhere. He wrote out his vision again. Okay. What did I do wrong that made me go bankrupt?
Wow.
What am I doing wrong? Okay, how do I make that better? And look, the man became the president of the United States.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, every time I make a mistake, I'm always checking myself and I'm looking, okay, what did I do wrong? Okay, how do I learn from that? Okay, how do I make that better? What do I do different?
Well, how can an addict hear that one and say, well, you know what? I already got it. What am I doing wrong that's making me relapse?
Right. You know, I was sharing with one of the clients here the other day, about a couple of weeks ago, young man in his 20s. And I said, you got to get to a point where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. I said, you know, the definition of a fool? Definition of a fool is a person that keeps doing the same thing over and over and over, thinking that they're going to get a different result.
That was me.
And I'm like, he's like, wow. He said, Stan, I ain't never heard no one ever talk to me like that or ever share that with me. He said, man, that hit hard. And I was like, yeah, man, we've been fools, continue to keep doing the same thing over and over, thinking that the result's going to change for addicts in any type of capacity. You know, the sexual addictions, the drug addictions, we keep doing the same thing over, thinking, okay, I'm trying to get a greater high, a greater high, a greater high. But it's still the same. It's nothing new. It's nothing different.
You know, that was me. What you're talking about, everything is coming off his mouth to remind me of who I used to be.
And but look at where you are now, man.
Exactly.
At that point, you had to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. That's where it starts. You got to hit a rock bottom place. Once you hit that rock bottom place, in hopes that the only place you can look up is up. And the only thing you're looking up to is God. Because at that moment, you're in that valley, you got to be taken out of that. That's how I even got here. I had to come to the valley place.
Yeah.
You literally prove what I always tell people. Sometimes you think you're going to achieve an identity, but when you get to the top, like being that professional athlete, the only place to go is where? Down. And I had to hit rock bottom. Yeah. Just like you said, man.
And every bottom's different, right?
Yeah.
My dad always used to tell me too, son, when you get there, just put down the shovel. Because I used to keep digging. Like, I'm going to dig my way out of this hole. Like, and it never makes sense, right? And it's just like, put the shovel down to start.
Yeah.
Right. Put it down. Because even sometimes when you even digging, you still throwing sand in the hole.
Yeah.
You burying yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I like that one, man.
I like that.
I love
Put
that
the
one,
shovel
man.
down.
That's not mine. That's Mr. Shetler's.
Mr. Shout out to Mr. Shedley.
I don't know how many times he's told me that. Yeah.
I'm going to send your dad a text and say thanks.
And you know what's cool too, man, is I've always heard, like, when you're empty, right? Like you talk about the ladle, the spoon thing. Like, when you're empty, if you look at it a different way, it's actually an opportunity for you to fill yourself up with something that you've never had before, whether it's, you know, faith or whatever it may be. So sometimes being empty isn't necessarily a bad thing, because, you know, it takes to develop that character. Sometimes it has to be in darkness, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I believe it. You know, and I definitely agree with that, because when you're out in the world, you're so filled up with the world.
Distractions.
And at one point, I remember my spiritual leader, he's my cousin, and that's how I got out here. He was like, man, you got to empty your glass. Once you empty your glass, then someone can pour into you. So you got to get to a point of, like you said, Buddha, being in an empty place, being fully empty of all that you went through, all of that negative, all of that hate, all of those things. Once you're released of that, now you're empty. And my prayer and the hopes is that now that spiritual, that peace, that encouragement is now being poured into you, especially in that valley place. And I think the only way you're going to get that is being in the valley. You know what I mean? We have to, everyone in their life had to get to that point.
And you got to make a point to surround yourself with people that want the same have the same kind of ideals, morals, all that stuff as you. Otherwise, you just fill yourself back up with shit.
Yes.
That's
If you're
real.
around shit, you're gonna be shit, right?
Yes.
You know, like that, Mr. Shetler again.
Yeah.
You are who you hang around.
Yep.
You know, and if you want to make those changes, especially getting out of using and that type of crowd, because everybody thinks they're your friend and I'm your friend, and hey, you have the drugs, I have the drugs, blah blah blah. They're not your friends. Find some real friends that actually care about you. They're very far from few. I will say that, but let them fill your glass.
Yes.
That's crazy.
With kindness and compassion and understanding and love and all those things, not all the other shit that comes with it.
You know, the very thing that Matt just said, when I was taking the clients, because I drive them to church every Sunday, one of the ladies was saying that they're an ILP, and she said, a friend of mine that I used to use would keep on reaching out to me and asking me that when I get out, if we can start hanging out together. And she said, can I get all you guys' advice? Because you guys are my friends. And guess what they told her? Don't you go back hanging out with her no more.
Exactly.
So the very thing Matt said is true. You got to come out from among that.
Absolutely. So, let me see. Anybody have any other questions they want to throw out before?
No, I just want to say thanks, man.
Yeah, go ahead, Vance.
No, I'm good. I just want to say thanks.
I'd like for Stan to share a little bit about his entrepreneurship real quick, but
please.
The thoughts and the the art stuff that you want to put out there.
Yeah. So.
Oh, he told me about that the other day too. So please share.
So this is that. So what I do
and where it comes from, Stan,
is, man, that's my outlet. You know.
Where did that start?
Man, always wanting to be a designer. I actually, growing up, I always wanted to be an artist. I drew real well, painted real well, always, just kind of, I was that kid, like elementary school, drawing pictures and cartoon characters, and my teachers looking like, you're in kindergarten. Like, how do you even, know how to draw, Sonic the Hedgehog and look like Sonic the Hedgehog, or paint like this, coloring the lines. I wasn't the typical, kid, you know what I mean? But I didn't know where it came from until one day I remember visiting back home in St. Pete, and I was at my grandmother's house, and I would see these pieces of wood with these like drawings of roses and all kind of stuff, and they were very intricate, and poems and things like that, because I wrote poems too. I remember writing a poem to a girl in kindergarten that I liked. My teacher got that thing. It was like, what would you even know about what you're saying here? But anyway, like, and that's, I was on that level back then. I saw those pieces of wood, and I was just like wondering. Well, I asked my grandma, I say, where did these pieces of wood came from? And she was like, oh, your dad sent those when he was locked up in prison. He would always send them. And I was like, wow. I was like, Dad's very talented. Okay, I see where I got that from.
Wow, that's cool.
So I never knew it, and I remember wanting to be an artist growing up, and I remember telling my aunt who raised me, and she was like, you're wasting your time, and that don't make no money. You need to be like a police officer, the basic, be a doctor or police officer or firefighter or astronaut or something. Yeah, and I'm like, none of that really pleases me like that, you know what I'm saying? That actually deterred me a lot from pursuing art. You know what I mean? Because I was told it was a waste of my time. So I kind of put it to the wayside a little bit. But, I've always been into like fashion and stuff like that, like streetwear and, back in those days, Karkanai, FUBU, cross colors, different things. And I was like always fascinated about this stuff because I never had that stuff. I wasn't able to wear that. I didn't have like the Nikes and the Jordans and all these things in my life. And I'm like, man, one day I'm going to start my own clothing line.
I used to get the Bufu from the swap meet, bro.
Yeah, the Bufu, you know what I mean? The fake stuff, with the fake polo shirts that had the monogram Polo Man all over the shirt back in the day. Like I couldn't afford the real thing. So I said I wanted to start my own brand one day, and I remember me and my buddies, I would always be sketching like little t-shirts and stuff, but I had no idea where to even begin. Wow. And I remember when FUBU hit the streets, it was like, wow, man, these guys, I want to be like them. I had an opportunity to actually meet these guys in real life. Damon John at one
Really,
point.
you met him? That's cool.
Yeah. It was not really in a good environment at the time. That's when I was in college and I was dancing and stuff, and we got invited to a club, and they had a FUBU bash in Tallahassee, and we was in the club, and I'm sitting there trying to be a businessman, talk to these drunk dudes like, yo, you know what I mean? They was partying. I'm in there like, yo, sir, how did you get there? Asking questions and
Wearing a thong.
Well, it wasn't that kind of party, but yeah, man, it was just the wrong timing at the time. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't really understood, but my mind was like, man, you're Damon John, you're these guys, you're FUBU. I need the answers.
Wow.
But, I always stayed drawn. And as I got older, man, one day I said, I'm going to do it. I started doing a lot of research, reading a lot of books, studying a lot of high-end fashion brands. And I remember, when I started, as a private investigator and doing in loss prevention, that role, and went to Texas and started working for, loss prevention, organized retail crime with like Gucci, Louis, and, a lot of those big name high-end companies. And I would always ask questions. I would always ask, research, how did they get started? Where did they begin? What is the quality? Where are they manufacturing? Studied, self-made pretty much. Like, I just dig in because I was passionate about it. And so it got to a point, I remember meeting a buddy of mine named Rodney out in Texas. And he had that same thing, and found out his mom was a tailor in Buffalo because he came from Buffalo, New York. He had sewing machines and everything. And I was like, listen, man, here's some of my designs. And he started sketching. He's like, yo, let's do this and that. And so we started making little coin pouches out of like gator and snake skin and all kind of stuff. We was doing it ourselves, and made some, bags, duffel bags, book bags. And we were getting a little traction, man. And then life happened. Life happened. Ended up moving back here to Tucson, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna get back to it. But I realized from those trial and errors of us trying to produce the stuff ourselves, I was like, yo, I have to get this manufactured. If I want the quality of what I want, it has to get manufactured by a company that specializes in high-end fashion leather goods. And so I started, over the years, just sketching and getting back to the grind again. I started doing that, and always drawing, keeping my sketchbook. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, having a vision of design, and I had a book next to my nightstand. Get up, draw to sketch it out real quick so I don't forget it, and that's just kind of how I got into it, man. I bought my first equipment, some years ago, where I said, you know what, I'm gonna buy my own t-shirt equipment, start doing my own thing, build my own brand, which eventually turned into me doing stuff for other people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Printing and embroidery and, t-shirts, hats, you name it, for other people. And that kind of just, the whole me doing my own thing went back to the wayside, because I didn't realize that there was more money in doing it for other people than to do it for yourself. But there's a process to it. You can make that type of money, but you can't do both. So you got to kind of figure out what direction you want to go into. And I remember talking to a millionaire that's in the print game that did that same thing. And I remember having that conversation, and he said, that's how I started. And he said, but you got to choose which one you want to go. So I currently right now own my own t-shirt printing and embroidery business called Print Geeks Design Studios. And also still in the process of building my own high-end fashion label that I want to do.
That's good, man.
I've had some run-ins with some manufacturers. I had some product that I had made, and shared it with you guys, and, just asking questions about the quality. The quality wasn't where I wanted to be for this run, but I'm back in the drawing board again. And, right now currently talking to two manufacturers overseas in India right now that actually specialize in high-end leather goods. And so I'm trying to get some samples made up again and trying to go back down that road. I own that. I used to own a car wash detailing business, ended up selling that last year. I just been in this entrepreneur game. And my other biggest thing right now is me and my business partner, Mikhail Lamb, out here in Tucson. We are actually developing our own pro basketball team down in Nogales, Arizona right now. We're currently affiliated with the American Basketball Associations, which is the league the ABA, which is the league that Dr. J came out of back in the 70s. So that's where we're at, man. I'm just trying to build, trying to leave a legacy, trying to build an empire for my kids, man. So, they'll have something to, have, or if they want it, but that's just what I'm doing right now, just trying to make it happen.
Good for you.
But, yeah.
Dude, bring in some of your stuff. We'll post pictures on the IG and everything.
Yeah, I got a couple things right here, I bought in that we just
Let's check these out
with you guys. And a couple wallets, hand wallets. I had some hats that they made for me, but I didn't bring them hats in because they shipped the hats, leather hats, all smashed, and it just the quality of it wasn't where I wanted to be.
Bro, this change purse, we just came back from Cali, right? I took this, I connected it to my backpack. The more and more that I feel it, I love the texture of this one in particular right here.
That's the smooth leather. Man.
Yeah, I love it, bro. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, but I think by all of that, the best thing that did come out of it was the actual bifold wallet that I liked. It was pretty decent. But like I said, once I get some new samples made, the direction is changing a little bit because, like I said, I started off with my buddy in Texas, but, he ended up getting a stroke and, life happened, you know what I mean? And, I reach out to him. I haven't talked to him in a while, but I've spoken to his wife, and she says he's in and out, you know what I mean? And, he just wanted to go in a different direction. And so I have to, kind of start all over, change the name a little bit and just trying to work, trying to grind, trying to build.
So all you got to do is keep going, right?
Yep, that's it.
Keep on trucking.
That's all we can do.
Sir.
Well, nice.
Awesome,
That's
brother.
good. Thank you, Stan.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for our homeboy Stan coming through, sharing his story, man. It's a beautiful story, especially letting people know that, you can make a choice. You don't have to suffer from those same generational curses. You know what I mean? Make a difference.
Yep. I want to say thank you because the opportunity of being here today, like I said, is my very first podcast, and I definitely think it went really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, went great.
It was natural. I want to thank, Matt, you know what I mean? That was a blessing that I was in here sitting with Buddha that day, and you walked in and it was like, oh man, the man of the hour. That's the guy I wanted to talk to, shake his hand. And
that's just what he told me the other day, Matt.
Most people used to run.
At first, that's what when I first saw y'all, I was like, oh man, I was like, man, I'm in here sitting in here talking, man. I need to be out there on the floor
I'm
or
easy.
whatever.
I'm easy peasy.
Yeah, bro.
It was a blessing, man. And then the next day, I'm at work and I'm up, in detox working, and Vance came up and I was like, oh man, I finally get to meet the other man of the hour, and it was just a blessing, man. It's like, for me, like I said earlier, you got to stay ready to keep from getting ready because you never know when God's going to bring the opportunity, around and put, certain people in your life. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And it was a blessing. It truly was a blessing, to share this moment with you guys. You know what I mean? I'm very honored to be here.
Stan.
So.
We are great. I'm glad I popped my head in that morning. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you and I said, it's all God's timing, man.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
That's it.
Never on ours. We're sitting around waiting.
That's it.
But we got to pay attention because this stuff comes at us in different views, right?
Yes, sir.
If you ain't paying attention to life, then it's going to pass you by.
That's real. That's real. Well, thank you guys very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Great job.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. We hope you have a beautiful rest of your week. We will see you next week, same time. Much love. God bless. Peace. What's going on, everybody? This is Buddha from the Arcast, and I just wanted to thank you for checking out this week's episode. It means a lot, and if you could share it with a friend or a loved one, somebody you need in recovery, or maybe somebody who just needs that little bit of extra positivity in their life, we'd greatly appreciate it. If you would like to join us here on the Arcast, either in the studio live or online, hit us up. The links are down in the show notes of this episode, and on there, you can find direct links to our main website here at Americas Rehab Campus and all of our social media platforms. Follow us. We keep the posts positive and motivational, focused on recovery, health, and wellness. As you know, in this modern day and age, we need as much love as possible, y'all. And as always, if you or somebody you know is in need of substance abuse treatment, please don't hesitate to give us a call. We're open 24 hours a day, and our direct phone number is 1-833-272-7342. Once again, that phone number is 1-833-272-7342. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day. Much love and God bless. Peace.